Good morning. Welcome to the Wilson Center. It's a great pleasure to welcome all of you to this Directors Forum with His Excellency Klaus Tsch, Prime Minister of the Principality of Liechtenstein. Established by an act of Congress in 1968, the Woodrow Wilson Center is our nation's official memorial, living memorial to President Woodrow Wilson. It was founded to honor and build upon his legacy as a man who bridged the divide between scholarship and public policy. We bring together the thinkers and the doers, policymakers, scholars, and business leaders in the hope and belief that frank and open dialogue will lead to better understanding, cooperation, and public policy. Today's Directors Forum, entitled Liechtenstein, Transparency, Trust, and Credibility in a Changing Global Financial Order, exemplifies the Center's commitment to dialogue, understanding, and cooperation in the name of serving the public in a much broader transnational context. His Excellency Klaus Tsch has had a distinguished career in the public service. Prior to his appointment as Prime Minister in March of 2009, His Excellency has served as Deputy Prime Minister and has been a member of the leadership of the Patriotic Union Party since 2005. He has held positions as the head of legal services and Deputy Director of the Liechtenstein Fiscal Authority. Prime Minister Tsch earned a doctoral degree in law from the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland and a Master of Law degrees in international business from the University of Zurich, Switzerland. During his academic career, he has also taught the Hochschule Liechtenstein and has been a research assistant at the University of St. Gallen. Mr. Tsch is a resident of the municipality of Ruggel, Liechtenstein's most northern municipality, situated along the Rhine River between the borders of Switzerland and Austria. It's a wonderful pleasure and honor to welcome you again to the Wilson Center, to welcome the entire delegation, and of course Ambassador Fritsche, who has also joined us today. Prime Minister Tsch, we look forward to your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Ostermann. Thank you for the kind words. Thank you all for coming. Friendship is the only cement that will ever hold the world together. These are the words of Thomas Woodrow Wilson, and we heard it. The 28th President of the United States and 1919 Nobel Peace Prize laureate was not only an ingenious politician, he was also a great thinker and a wise man. His words are particularly valid and carry special weight in times like these. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor and a true pleasure to be able to speak to you at this moment and at this place. An opportunity for which I would like to express my sincere gratitude. 100 years ago, President Wilson provided an answer to a fundamental question of humanity, namely, what is it on the inside that holds the world together? A world especially turbulent both then and now. Many citizens in many countries are asking themselves exactly the same question today. Politicians and diplomats, business leaders and journalists in every country must face the same question and formulate answers, or at least attempt to do so. We have a special responsibility in these turbulent times. We are the pilots who must guide, escort, and steer the ship of our time through the stormy waters. But how should we do this? Transparency, trust, and credibility are three of the keys. They fit the same lock. With these keys, we open the doors to friendship and thus to respectful relations between individuals and countries. Yesterday and today, the leaders and pilots of the most important commercial and industrial countries, the so-called G20 states, have been meeting for their summit in Pittsburgh. They have been consulting on the next steps to overcome the financial crisis. Irrespective of the concrete result of the meeting, I can say the following. Without a basic level of mutual trust, such gatherings would make no sense. The same is true of the General Assembly of the United Nations, which has just commenced in New York. After 2 world wars, the United Nations has become a permanent institution of global significance. It mediates in many conflicts, forms a buffer between the fronts, and keeps the peace in many forgotten places on this earth. It draws its great credibility and high reputation solely from the trust placed in it by millions of people around the world. Friendship is the only cement that will ever hold the world together. In their relations with powerful countries, small states like Liechtenstein are especially reliant on this cement. But how will this cement has held so far between the United States and Liechtenstein? This can be seen in the negotiations on a bilateral tax information exchange agreement, so-called TIAA, that was concluded last fall. The negotiations were transparent, fair, and characterized by mutual trust and respect. Over the course of the long negotiations, members of the US delegation most likely came to realize something that is significant. Financial services are indeed important for the Liechtenstein business location. But the Liechtenstein business location does not consist solely of financial services. 2/3 of the gross domestic product of our economy are generated by highly specialized industrial and services companies. My country is a small state. More than just about any other country, it is therefore closely linked to foreign countries and existentially dependent on smoothly functioning open export markets around the world. Another special characteristic of Liechtenstein is its system of state. Our principality in the heart of Europe is a hereditary monarchy on a democratic and parliamentary basis. This means that sovereignty is embodied both in people and in the reigning prince. The acting head of state is currently hereditary Prince Alois von Liechtenstein. His family is one of the oldest noble families in Europe. Already in the 17th century, he took over the regency of the territory near the border triangle of Austria, Switzerland, and Germany. Liechtenstein became a sovereign state under international law in 1806. Since then, the country has become a member of various international organizations. These include the Council of Europe, the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, the European Economic Area, and the European Free Trade Association. Liechtenstein has maintained a currency union with Switzerland and its Swiss franc since 1924. This brief historic overview is important. The past is the only library containing the lessons learned for shaping the future. A striking example of this consists in the activities and achievements of your honorable institution, the Woodrow Wilson International Centers for Scholars. We should never forget the past. Also, and especially in times when the future confronts us with inexorable changes that cannot be ignored. Today, the future is besieging us with many questions. Many people have understood that we are experiencing times of rapid change. Some call it a crisis. This is change we must face up to. A paradigm shift is taking place that affects everyone, including financial service providers and financial centers around the world, such as Liechtenstein. 2 developments are particularly important in this regard. Tax transparency and tax cooperation between states are the standard for the future. And the density of regulation for competitors on the international financial markets will continue to increase. we cannot stop either of these developments, even if we are critical about some of their consequences. With regard of the density of regulation, for instance, it must be said, more regulation does not necessarily mean better regulation. Small states with a small domestic market know very quickly when more regulation begins to limit and especially distort free competition. Liechtenstein has been a member of the European Economic Area since 1995. The rules established for the European Union and its single market for financial services are therefore controlling for us. In return, our financial service providers enjoy direct access to the European Union single market. Note that all 27 member states of the European Union decide on new standards jointly. This is a good and comforting thing. It ensures in principle that a level playing field in Europe is guaranteed. Every continent is now trying to overcome the financial crisis with specific decisions and measures. At the level of the European Union, the recommendations of the so-called de la Rosière group will be ready for discussions and political decision-making this fall. Among other measures, these recommendations propose an improvement of cross-border cooperation for supervision and an enhanced status for the three existing European supervisory committees, the committees for banking, insurance and securities. Surely this is neither the place nor the time to examine all the details of these proposals. I would merely like to note that the discussions on the quality of the new regulation of financial markets are intense in Europe as well. The phenomenon of ever denser regulation has not arisen only since the eruption of the financial crisis. Over-regulation leads to lack of transparency. This is not something we want. We believe government should be transparent to citizens, but we reject the creation of what we might call a transparent citizen about whom the government knows everything. Transparent citizens could be made possible by the interplay of extreme overregulation and the new technological possibilities and data warehousing and transmission. In recent months, data scandals have been disclosed in various European countries. These are indications of massive violations of citizens' privacy. We do not want a totally transparent citizen because we trust citizens to take individual responsibility for their own actions. Our state trusts its citizens. Especially in times of uncertainty and rapid change, independently thinking and self-responsibly acting and deciding citizens are the basis for the stability of every society and every state. One expression of the fundamental protection of privacy is banking confidentiality. But let me make one thing very clear. Banking confidentiality is not the same as tax secrecy. The two must be clearly distinguished. Tax evasion is a tantamount to abuse of banking secrecy and is no longer tolerated by Liechtenstein. International cooperation and transparency in tax matters will now constitute the standard for Liechtenstein. We have clearly defined and internationally communicated this step with the Liechtenstein Declaration of March 12th of this year. With this declaration, Liechtenstein has committed itself to the global OECD standards on transparency and exchange of information in tax matters. Moreover, Liechtenstein is offering interested states bilateral tax agreements for effective cooperation to combat tax fraud and tax evasion. Liechtenstein also wants to ensure legal certainty and compliance while protecting privacy and bank client confidentiality. In this way, Liechtenstein wants to meet its responsibilities toward the financial center's clients as well as toward the legitimate tax claims of its treaty partners. What is important for the conclusion of such bilateral agreement is mutual understanding on how to regulate past, current and future tax obligations. Such an understanding allows any financial center clients who are not tax compliant to make an orderly and prompt transition to tax compliance. The promises set out in the Liechtenstein Declaration a bit more than a half year ago are demanding. But we have followed words with deeds and have met our promises. As the first country ever, Liechtenstein recently concluded a tailor-made tax agreement with the United Kingdom. This agreement clearly and transparently makes a distinction between tax secrecy and bank secrecy. The agreement would enter in force in 2010. Persons taxable in the United Kingdom with untaxed assets in Liechtenstein will have time until 2015 to disclose such assets voluntarily to the UK authorities. If, for whatever reason, they choose not to do so by then, all financial intermediaries in the financial center will be required to terminate such client relationships. The future has arrived in Liechtenstein. With this first agreement of its kind, we have established intelligent and thus sensible and fair transparency. Every qualitative step requires a minimum of courage and causes some amount of uncertainty. We have overcome this uncertainty. Liechtenstein financial service providers are already noticing that this path, substantially shaped by the policy, is the only right path to take a changing global financial order. Trust arising from intelligent transparency is the basis on which the Liechtenstein Financial Center is building its future. Trust engenders credibility. Credibility is a crucial basic value for all financial centers in times of rapid change. You appreciate this value especially when you feel that you are in danger of losing it. As a small state, Liechtenstein enjoys the significant advantage that its channels of communication are short and political decisions can be made very quickly. All financial centers around the world are now called upon to fulfill the promise of transparency, trust and credibility. How quickly trust and credibility can vanish was shown strikingly by the financial crisis that erupted over a year ago. Restoring the three keys of transparency, trust and credibility cannot be done simply by publishing a declaration. It requires a process of renewal that will take years and demand much of everyone involved. One condition for the success of the process is the interplay between policy and stakeholders in the market. In Liechtenstein, policy has clearly taken the lead. Taking account of input by stakeholders, it is now setting forth the standards. It is the responsibility of the stakeholders, however, to then assert themselves on the market versus their competitors. In light of all this, the current crisis is a call to policy to clear now path and take responsibility. At the same time, it is an opportunity to remember certain basic values and to strengthen and renew them. Transparency, trust, and credibility are the key to one and the same lock. They open the door to friendship. A friendship is the only cement that will ever hold the world together. In this spirit, I would like to thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Prime Minister has graciously agreed to take some questions, and he will be joined up here for that session by Dr. Katja Guy and Mr. René Brühlhardt. So the floor is open for questions and comments. We are webcasting this event live, so I'd like to ask you to wait for the microphone, and also in Wilson Center tradition, introduce yourself before you speak. We'll go right here.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. My name is Mike Berkeley. I'm with the U.S. Agency for International Development, and I was stationed in Moldova for 2 years, and just want to let you know I was very, very impressed with the Liechtenstein Development Organization there. They have a new program they started, and they worked very closely with the other donors, and they were doing very good work on training for women who are at risk of trafficking. So I was just very, very impressed with the way they I've never seen a donor agency sort of hit the ground running that well, where within 6 months they were in the country, they were doing very positive things. And we were actually able to do a co-funding together on an anti-trafficking project. So it's not really a question, it's just a comment to thank your country and to thank you, and also thank Chief Pham, who was the country director, for the excellent work they did. And I hope that USAID and LED, the Liechtenstein Development Organization, can continue to sort of have a productive relationship where we replicate this in other countries, not just Moldova. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Yes. Mm-hmm.
Sarah Lewis with Tax Justice Network USA. With great respect and appreciation for the steps forward towards transparency, I'd be grateful if you could comment on the following. The way the OECD standards are currently being implemented through the bilateral tax information exchange agreements doesn't, in all reality, provide for transparency. The agreements as such are basically saying that the requesting authority has to already have the information on a client on which to base a request, but by the very nature of the business, generally that business is hidden. Appreciate your remarks on the difference between banking confidentiality and tax secrecy. Certainly we don't advocate for breach of privacy. However, in the same way, for instance, as domestically within the United States, if you have a bank account, then information is passed to the tax authorities. True transparency would mean that globally, multilaterally, that kind of information is available. We're not talking about breach of privacy. We're talking about generally available information on that same basis. And with all due respect, and I speak as a former offshore banker, a former private banker in offshore locations also, I understand your point about trusting your clients to be diligent in reporting to their own tax authorities. However, in all reality, where there are layers of banking confidentiality combined with financial instruments that provide for layering and hiding of assets, nevertheless, people will use jurisdictions allowing for those means and mechanisms. People will use those to hide their assets, to hide from tax authorities. Now, thank you, and I would be grateful for your comments.
Thank you. I think that was no question. Thank you for your remarks. We see it like you expressed with your words. In the agreements we have negotiated, we are about actually 10. I'm looking to Ms. Guy. She has negotiated over the night, I think. The banking secrecy is no longer a restriction to give the informations, but in a way we have negotiated with other states and not in a free-floating manner. We want to have very clear positions, and I think the best way is to have these issues on the table and to come to solutions with the states. And with UK we made a TIAA. With UK we made another agreement. With Germany we made a TIAA, and we go further in the negotiations. We want to have a double taxation agreement, and we had the first round of negotiations with Germany, and I think this is the right way to have the interests on the table on a bilateral way, and we do not want to have the situation back to discuss all these topics over the medias.
Yeah, maybe I could add a little bit on that point. Ah, okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Maybe I could add a little bit on that. Of course, the OECD standards, as they stand now, they are the standards. They are globally accepted, and therefore they are also the standards we have committed ourselves to implement. But as the Prime Minister has said, the OECD standards for us, they are only to be seen as a starting point. And we have tried with the agreement we have just concluded with the United Kingdom to go further than that and to achieve a solution that within a certain period of time aims to achieve full tax compliance of all UK clients that make use of the financial services provided in Liechtenstein through an approach that does not only benefit the tax revenue service of the UK by way of securing them the tax revenue. It does also benefit, of course, the taxpayer as such, because the taxpayer has a unique opportunity to voluntarily disclose the tax arrears. I mean, why these tax arrears and why the non-compliance has arisen in the past. I think that would be a discussion that could go on forever. There are of course, many reasons for that, and then you have of course, the ethical and moral aspects comes into play. But I think that's not something we should discuss now. I mean, what we want to do, we want to be helpful to our clients because they placed trust in our financial services operators by using their services, but we also want to show them a good path how they can now regularize their affairs in achieving compliance. And we do not believe that a world of complete transparency where you could look via the internet in all the bank accounts and so on, because that would be contrary to our understanding of privacy. But we would like to achieve a systems where there is for everybody a system where compliance can be achieved without having all the information public. And of course, when any doubt arises whether tax compliance has been met, we of course will provide all the information that is needed for the foreign tax authority to assess whether the tax obligations have been met. And I mean, I think to achieve tax compliance, it is also not really very much reasonable to set up a lot of databases and administrative systems that cost a lot of money in the end, and will then in the end force maybe states to increase their taxes even further. And that's maybe some of the remarks I would like to make with regard to the comments you have made. But I think in the end we share all the same aim. There are maybe some differences on how best to achieve it, but I think we have shown with our one agreement, we have concluded into that direction one possible and very efficient way how to achieve that aim.
Thank you. May I ask, Mr. Prime Minister, the agreement with the UK, will this be a model for agreements with other countries?
it could be a model, but not every country is prepared to do these things with us. And Katja is in all the negotiations involved, and they can give us perhaps a short overview what other countries can do and what they cannot do at the actual moment.
Well, for the time being, the UK is really the only country. Of course, we have now already concluded such treaties. There are some countries that have at least expressed interest. We are in contacts also with other countries, but it's the approach we have chosen with the UK. It is a give and take. In that approach, the UK has provided for a special voluntary disclosure opportunity that will last for 5.5 years, that provides for very attractive provisions for UK taxpayers to disclose their possible undeclared monies. And on the other hand, Liechtenstein has committed to ensure that compliance on the level of the financial intermediaries. They have to identify potential UK taxpayers. They have to notify them about their obligations to either register for the voluntary compliance for voluntary disclosure facility, or then if they are not, in the end, not willing to prove their tax compliance to the Liechtenstein financial intermediaries, they in the end will have to leave and move their assets somewhere else. So that's something we cannot offer alone to other countries, but that is something that has to be negotiated between two partners, and in the end, it will then in the end depend on the offer also the other country makes, how the assessment then will be in the end, whether the interest of both parties, all the parties involved, will be balanced. So for the time being, I think one could say if in the end, with another country, with another jurisdiction, we come to the same assessment as we have come with the UK, we would be ready to conclude on the model basis of the UK agreement a similar agreement. Maybe some countries, for the time being, they are just looking does it really work? How is it implemented? How does it work in practice? So it could well be that sometime in the future further agreements on that model will follow. But it could also be that other countries, together with other third countries, take that model up and establish such kind of agreements among themselves. And as the OECD in that process has been also very helpful to us, the OECD is also kind of a promoter of that Liechtenstein approach. I think that could be a model that could be used not only by us but also by others for the future. Of course, there are also other possibilities how to secure the revenues of foreign tax authorities, like withholding tax approaches and so on. And also that approach might be a viable one, but always depending on whether your potential treaty partner accepts that approach, and maybe also based on the fact whether kind of a withholding tax is known in the national law of that other potential partner. So there are different ways to achieve more or less the same aim, I would say.
Thank you. Questions? Yes, in the back.
Hi, my name is Heather Lowe from Global Financial Integrity. as an offshore jurisdiction, Liechtenstein has a significant responsibility to really assist with enforcement of sort of international criminal laws. We know that you put your first AML, anti-money laundering laws in place in 1996, and that you've been improving those since that time, based on some criticisms that you've had from international sectors. Enforcement, however, is still an issue. The State Department notes that you've only had 2 prosecutions for money laundering in the entire time you've had money laundering laws, and that you've actually had no convictions. Is Liechtenstein doing anything to address this issue?
René, that's your part.
Hi. I'm René Brulhard. I'm the director of the Financial Intelligence Unit in Liechtenstein, and I don't know where you have the statistics from, but yeah. Okay, so most probably they should update their statistics. So it's there are definitely many investigations going on in regard to money laundering. The issue on the conviction, there you have a point, but I mean, the problem we do face there is that most of the cases we do have, they are not kind of fully originated in Liechtenstein. In other words, normally you have kind of an international context, and let's take the Siemens case, for example, which we have initiated in Liechtenstein. There the issue is that the main case as such is stated, for example, in Germany or in Greece or in other places. So what we are normally doing, and if you see kind of the mutual legal assistance requests we are receiving, but we are also sending out, I mean, there we have a very close cooperation, and I think that's a little bit our understanding to help and to support our global partners in having convictions then in the relevant countries. So, in other words, what is absolutely key for us is the international cooperation. And I think there we have done over the last kind of 5-8 years, we have made tremendous step forward. So in case, if you compare kind of a theory again by the statistics, so if you compare countries like, okay, I don't want to name any one of them, but let's say some kind of other offshore jurisdictions.
Yeah. We do not make lists.
Some other offshore jurisdictions. And you see how many rogatory letters we receive, and we do answer in very due time, or we send out. I think there is a significant difference between Liechtenstein and some other kind of jurisdiction you can compare with. So I think we have done pretty much our homework in the fight against money laundering and combating terrorist financing, and I think this has also on very several occasions been recognized by U.S. authorities, and there is definitely no way back. So we continue to work quite strongly in that regard, and we're more than willing to update the statistics of the State Department. Thanks.
Maybe just one addition. I think the number of conviction is not necessarily the appropriate
indicator.
Thank you. The appropriate indicator on how efficiently cooperation and fight against money laundering works, because as Mr. Brulhard has pointed out, I mean, even if the assets are located in Liechtenstein, and we, of course, will then, in case of any money laundering event, block these assets, and immediately the actual underlying crime has not happened in Liechtenstein, and therefore the prosecution of it is also better and more efficiently taken care of in the jurisdictions that were more involved in it. So I think that's also maybe an aspect you should consider when solely relying on any statistics. However, they might not be really up to date anyway.
Thank you. Yes.
Good morning. I'm Excellency from the Channel 3 in France. You were speaking during your speech about financial scandal this last month. In France and in United States, we were speaking a lot about Mr. Enrich Kaiba. What do you think about his testimony? It was a good thing, you think, or a bad thing?
Was soll ich sagen? Keine Ahnung.
That's very difficult. Mr. Kaiba was giving testimony.
I think that's not a question about good or not good. That's a
Yes,
fact.
but what? Yeah, that's a fact.
And he does a
but,
crime in Liechtenstein, but we can.
It's not a crime here.
Yeah, but he does a crime in Liechtenstein, and we wanted to have the information if it was Kaiba, which gives the information to the US, to Germany. We don't get an answer. And that's another fact, but it does not affect me. We must have to look forward and not go in the past. That's very simple for us. I think we don't spend much energy in this question.
Okay.
I don't know if he Liechtenstein people, if he has or he changed to be an American or an Australian people. I don't know, but this is all. Everything is not does not affect us. We take it like it is, and I hope we get the answers for the questions we searched. Mr.
Enrich Kaiba still a criminal in Liechtenstein?
Yes, the court is active, but the politics does not affect the court. That's a question of them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, over here.
I'm Edith Palmer, and I work at the Library of Congress. And I must apologize for introducing a more abstract and scholarly issue. I've always been impressed by the Liechtenstein legal system that in the early days was based on Austrian law and later on Swiss law. And I'd like to know, apparently at least Mr. Tsch is a lawyer, and I don't know about Ms. Gay, what are the challenges and opportunities of such a legal system, and how do you develop your own personality within it?
Okay, I give you a first answer. We must have a distinction between the civil law. The civil law is based on the Austrian law, and the law, the public law, the so-called public law, is mostly based on Swiss law, and this has several advantages. We can go into the expert books, and we can have the judicials from Switzerland, from Austria, and this is the way we want to go further. We have a new level. We have to admit about 200s, 300s guidelines of the economic area situation we must implement in Liechtenstein, and that is not often a real easy situation to do this and fit in our system, but we try our best, and we try it with only about 10 persons, and I think other administrations are a little bit bigger.
Thank you.
Maybe I could add that I think for Liechtenstein it has been very wise to rely on the legislation of our neighbors, of Switzerland and of Austria, because I mean we are a very small country, and when it comes to case law, we do not have case law for each and every case that arises, and therefore if we have the same legislation, be it in the civil or in the criminal law, and we can rely on the foreign judgments of the judgments of foreign courts. We can rely on expertise of legal experts that helped us very much in the past. And so I think that's a very wise thing for a small jurisdiction to look at what others have done and to copy things that have proven to be wise and effective, but also to develop its own law, and we have done that in particular in the area of company law. And then, as the Prime Minister has outlined, the other aspect is now we have the perspective of European and international law that very much comes into our legal system as well. So our legal system now is very much a mix, not only of the jurisdictions of our neighbors and our own law, but also it's very much based now on European law and international law. And I think that's in a way the best thing, how a small judicial system can survive in the future.
Can
yes.
I just Thank you. I think it's important to add here, especially in regard to the financial centre. So Liechtenstein is member of the European Economic Area, which means that Liechtenstein has to implement all the relevant European standards in regard to fight against money laundering and combating financing terrorism. So, I mean, there we are in full compliance with international standards. So, but what we definitely try to do is to come up with kind of tailor-made solutions in this kind of, with Swiss law, Austrian law, but then also kind of fully implement the international standards, especially the European ones. Thank you.
Thank you. This gentleman up here has been patiently waiting. Microphone, please.
I'm Robert Chiretta. I'm president of International Investor, and I'd like to thank the Center and all of you for coming today. I know this isn't easy, sometimes facing a lot of American questions. So let me broaden the discussion a little bit by asking what other activities or what other aspects of the economy does Liechtenstein intend to grow beyond the money center? And even within the money center, are there other activities you can describe other than capturing assets and protecting assets that contribute to economic value?
Oh, that's a very important question. We have a very broad economic situation in Liechtenstein. We are, I think, the most industrialized country of the world. About 40–45% of our population earns the money in the industry, and this is often not known, and not known also by the politicians and my colleagues in Europe, and even in the three sectors, in the financial sector, the industry sector, and the agricultural sector, but in the industrial sector we have a broadened situation. We have insurance companies, we have fiduciary companies, we have about 16 banks, we have pension fund as a new field of our financial sectors, and I think this brought us the success in the past, and this will be our path in the future and our way, and we want to strengthen the conditions and to have good business in Liechtenstein on this broaden way.
Thank you. Behind you. Okay, then the gentleman in the back. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jeremiah Barenberg from Dutco Worldwide. We're a government affairs firm. Mr. Prime Minister and your delegation, thank you for being here. I wanted to ask about recent proposed legislation in the U.S. That specifically targets what are called offshore secrecy jurisdictions. As you know, the President has come out with proposals in recent years. There's been proposed legislation, none of which has ever been voted on or passed, but you're most likely aware of Senator Levin's legislation and maybe other alternative legislation. But on that legislation, there's a list of what are called offshore secrecy jurisdictions, and Liechtenstein and I think about 30 other countries are also in that list. Some of them have made the point that the criteria for that list is faulty, outdated, doesn't reflect the current reality. My question, is Liechtenstein at all concerned about the that list or that legislation potentially being agreed to, what would be the consequences if it were passed, and included that list on which Liechtenstein is a part. Thank you.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to thank you for these questions. This gives us the opportunity to say why I'm here. It's not the only reason to speak to you. We had several talks yesterday on the Capitol Hill, and one of the topics was the Tax Abuse Act, and I think we had we could describe the situation of Liechtenstein, and most of the people on the Capitol Hill know very well that Liechtenstein is no longer an uncooperative tax haven, and therefore I think we must observe the situation, but we can go in the future with a good hope in this area. And Katja, you can talk about the criteria which we talked about yesterday, and
yeah, maybe. I mean, whether this legislation will be passed and in what form it will be passed, as we understand, is still open. But the proposals that have been presented, they are of course they are of concern to us, especially if such a legislation would include any listing of so-called uncooperative jurisdictions, which in the talks we had, we understand that there are serious doubts whether such listing anyway would be then part of a final package of such legislation. But anyway, the proposal that would include any listing of jurisdictions, I mean, in essence, we think that at least Liechtenstein should not be considered to be on such a list, and also with regard to the criteria that have been outlined, we do not think that these should be really the criteria that are pertinent in that respect, because when it comes to the US, we have concluded a tax information exchange agreement with the US that is based on the model agreement of the US. We have concluded it, we have adopted it in our parliament, we have passed our implementing legislation, and it will be entering into force on 1st of January 2010. And therefore, we believe we have done what the US asked us for, and therefore we should not be targeted by any national legislation that is discriminatory to our economic operators. And I mean, the criteria maybe anyway are, if you look at it from today's perspectives, are might be outdated. They refer to not really the actual situation, and therefore either maybe the legislation will not contain any listing approach, and if it does, we are very much confident that Liechtenstein will not appear on any such list. I'd like to compliment.
Thank you. I mean, Liechtenstein clearly supports the US in his way forward, how to address certain tax issues. The question is more a little bit how this is going to happen. So what we have done since the very first draft of the bill came out, we quite actively consulted with the relevant players in there. And I think that's also kind of, let's say, a new understanding for Liechtenstein to look for dialogue and to better understand how these kind of issues might be addressed, how it could affect Liechtenstein, but especially also, to in a dialogue to bring your own points in. And I think there we have been quite fruitful in this kind of talks, and we definitely will continue to go this way.
Time for one more question all the way in the back. Final question.
Thank you, guys, again for being here. Clark Gascoigne with Global Financial Integrity. I just wanted to quickly ask you guys about in recent weeks your print amid the sort of the tax evasion crackdown in Germany invoked the Holocaust and the service that banking secrecy provided to Jews in the Holocaust as a reason that the Germans shouldn't be talking about cracking down on tax evaders in Liechtenstein. And aside from the fact that invoking the Holocaust in an argument generally degrades the quality of any argument, regardless of whether or not you're in the right, I'm just wondering what you guys would have to say to the fact that Liechtenstein maybe certainly with its banking secrecy could have provided a safe haven for certain Jews, but also provided a safe haven for Nazis trying to reach out to the international market during the war and then afterwards. I mean, this is a two-way streak.
Thank you.
Yes, we had a commission in about 10 years ago, I think, who examined the situation about this question you talked, and but we can't exclude that this can happen, that there is a case about this, but we can't. But in other words, we must look in the future, and in Liechtenstein there is the situation clear. If there comes to us such a case, we will have a look at it, and we have the situation quite clear to this position. And sorry, but I do not comment the comments of our prince. That's his position, and the government has its own position to this agreement.
Yeah, maybe first of all, it's important to know that during the Second World War, the Liechtenstein Financial Center was, I mean, it's even the question whether the Liechtenstein Financial Center is an important one now. I mean, if you compare it to what is written and told about in the media, you would think that Liechtenstein must be one of the biggest and most important financial centers of the world, but in fact it isn't. It is a very small and compared to the global volume relatively unimportant financial center, and even more during times of the Second World War. Liechtenstein was still a very quite a poor country, and the financial center only developed more or less after the Second World War, and that's also why the examination of the historical commission found no or almost no involvement at all in of the financial center. Then secondly, I think the important thing to note is that Liechtenstein does not in any way want to be a safe haven for any criminal money, and does also not want to be attractive for monies that are hidden from the tax authority, and therefore it is important to see what we have done especially in the past 10 years to secure this at the level of our legislation and international treaties, and now extend this commitment also to the tax field.
Thank you. I think especially in regard to Germany, Liechtenstein feels quite comfortable. So just to give you an example goes a little bit into that direction, especially after the wall fall, when Germany started to look quite extensively after assets belonging to the former Eastern German, let's say, regime or government or the party. Liechtenstein was one of the first country which has, in a very, very active way, traced assets and returned it to Germany, which also has been acknowledged kind of 5 years ago by the German government. So I think there we do our homework. We give also quite clear signals out, and especially with Germany, we had quite successful cases. Thank you.
Thank you. We're out of time. So let me conclude this session by thanking the Prime Minister for his remarks, by thanking his colleagues as well. Ambassador Tsch, thank you for your comments and questions. I think this was a stimulating session. We're adjourned. Thank you.